So, Jed, hey, congratulations on another successful World Series Blu-ray edition, right?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I was checking out your filmography. You are one true baseball fan.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, between MLB Network and before that, MLB Productions, I've kind of done about 20 years working for baseball, which is great.
So how did you start on everything with baseball?
So, I mean, the abridged version is I first job was ESPN for a few years out of college, and then got the job working with MLB Productions, and then spent several years there. Then took a little journey freelance for a bit, and then when MLB Network launched in 2009, I got the job with MLB Network, and have been there since. So what our group does there, we do a little bit of features, long form programming, documentaries, the World Series film, sort of like the original content department of the network.
So are you a true baseball fan, or you just happen to been doing this for decades?
No, definitely baseball nut since I was younger. You know, grew up in New York City, a Yankee fan. So been around baseball my entire life.
Wow, excellent. So how does it feel doing this, the World Series production for MLB for 5 years straight?
It's great. It's a big undertaking. It's a huge project, but it's a lot of fun. We have a great team of people from producers and editors, writers, shooters, and having done this, and I've done it, for the last 5 years in this role that I'm in now. But all told, I've probably worked close to 10 of them, and each one is unique. They're fun. This one very unique, of course, this year, and it's an exciting project to work on. And different cities, different teams, different storylines every year. And it's one of our favorite, if not the favorite project every season that we do.
Is it getting easier for you since you're kind of used to this now?
You get more familiar with it for sure. You sort of know how to budget your time, your resources, hit the deadlines. But each year presents different obstacles, different challenges. Of course, this year, everything we've done in years past helps the experience. But then when you get a year like this, 2020, where you have to navigate all kinds of different challenges and stuff, it's kind of like you throw out the playbook and start over. But yeah, it does. I mean, looking back to the very first one, you certainly get more comfortable with it and know what you need to cover, where you need to be, the things that you prioritize. And with each year, different challenges, but the experience certainly helps.
Well, obviously, you mentioned it a couple of times already. 2020 was probably one of the most challenging and most different year for yourself. Talk about some of the challenges that you have to face, since you're not a player, but you're on the production side.
Yeah, I mean, especially this year, it's just we had less resources on site just because of the pandemic and the protocols and the quarantine. So, less camera people, less producers, less crew members, but you're still trying to capture just about the same amount of stuff. When we look back at the film, I don't think it shows, and hopefully it doesn't, that we had less resources, because we still got pretty much everything we usually do. So it was just having to allocate things a little differently. Usually when we're out at site, we have so many resources that we don't really have to decide, well, do we want to be in a press conference room, or do we want to be with a player? Do we want to be on the field, or do we want to be in the stands? We could kind of flood the zone and have people everywhere. This year was a little bit different. There were different levels of access. There were different protocols we had to follow, less people because of the quarantine. So it was just thinking a little more about and prioritizing more than we've had to do in years past.
Did you end up with less footage than the previous four World Series, or?
That's a great question. Not by much, no. In terms of the game coverage, we were very close. A little bit, a little bit overall. The only things we weren't really able to do, once you're at the field, most of what we covered was right on par with what we've done in the past. But what we've been able to do in a lot of these past years is we've had some access. We might go to a player's home the day of a game or the night before a game. We might ride to the field with a player. We might do some things away from the field, in and around the city. Those were the types of things this year that we weren't able to do. So in that respect, sure, we had a little bit less footage, but not really with the games. Pre-game coverage, post-game coverage, interviews, game action. That was really close to what we've done the past 5 years.
Well, obviously, you had to have safety in mind for your production crew. when handling this pandemic.
Definitely. And it's really not a whole lot different than what we've been doing just in everyday society, whether it's, well, our producers on site, first off, had a quarantine. So they were there, that's a big difference. Usually we'll arrive in the city maybe a day or two prior to the series beginning. This year, our producers, our tier producers that have access to the players, they were there about 10 to 12 days before the series even began. So, which helped that, of course, the location. And then anything and everything from masks to sanitizers to where you can go, where you can be. Certain levels of production people have different levels of access. So we had crews and producers that could be by the players. And then we had crews and producers which could roam the stands. They could shoot from camera wells. They could do those things, but they would never get up close to a player or on the field or anything. So it's just a matter of knowing about what your clearance level is, so to speak.
Excellent. Well, obviously, one of the things that, because this is your fifth time doing it, and every single year you have a different storyline, but because this is a pandemic year, how much of the pandemic storyline did you want to put in? Because you want to basically highlight the fact that this is the Dodgers, winning a World Series after so many decades.
Yeah, I mean, you're balancing. It's a great point. Two things. Like, it's an iconic franchise that's winning a World Series that they've been chasing for 32 years, and especially the last decade where they've been good every year. But you're also, we're trying to document as best we can what's really happening. How does the series look? How does it feel? What does it look like? And we didn't want to run from it. We wanted to kind of almost accentuate, and this is what this year looked like. This is what 2020 felt like. And I think it's a little bit, for our respects, different, let's say, than watching a game broadcast. I think when you watch a game broadcast, I would imagine that the broadcasters are trying as much as possible to make it look like this is what you're used to, whether we pump in crowd noise or change how our camera angles look. We want you to feel like you're just watching a regular game. Where for what we did this year, we didn't want to run from that. So if a player was speaking in a press conference room that's usually packed with 100 people, and this year there was not one person in there but us, we were trying to show that empty room. We were showing people arriving in masks. We were showing sections of the fans where you'd see people and then you would see it be totally empty, because that is what the series felt like. But to your point, once the game started, I think that's when, for us, the normalcy kind of took over. When the actual World Series games started, they were dramatic, they were exciting, there were questionable calls, managerial moves, and I think in that respect, we wanted to cover it no different than a regular World Series. But how it looked and felt, often pregame and postgame, is where we wanted to document as much as we could how it really was.
So behind the scenes effort, how much preparation, when do you start the preparation for doing a World Series documentary like this? Because a lot of people probably think it's after the World Series ends, but that's not true.
No, not for us, because because you have to plan so much anyway with your crews and travel and all the logistical things. But for us with this film is we deliver it 10 days after the final out. So it's pretty tight. So there's not a ton of time. You always can adjust. You could change your schedules. You could talk about how you want to do certain things, but you really can't gather all your footage, come back, take a breather and say, all right, what do we want to do with this? We don't really have that luxury. I'm not sure how the other leagues work. Some of them might have a lot of time to do their championship films. So no, we do a lot of the planning and preparation beforehand, especially because most of this film, if not almost 100% of it, comes from site. We really don't have the time to come back and then figure out what we need to get. So it's a lot of preparation and a lot of trying as much as we can when we're there to get what we need. So if we want to say do storylines evolving with Clayton Kershaw, we make every effort to know that once we get on a plane and head back out of here, we're probably not seeing him again. So whether that's interviews with him or footage with him, we need to really maximize what we're doing out on site, because especially in a year like this year where we knew there was no going back out. Once we left site, which was Texas, what we came back with was what the film is. So yeah, there's a ton of preparation and then a lot of day-to-day, if not hour-to-hour adjusting while you're out there, just knowing that you don't really have much luxury to make up for lost things when you get back.
Wow. And how do you meet your deadlines? Because it's such a shortened deadline to accomplish all this.
It's a really tight deadline. I mean, I guess first and foremost, a really great team of people, and they are, top level editors, great shooters at site, great field producers at site. And then when we get back, we just have a really good post-production team of people, most of which have been on the, many of which have been on this for years, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, some of them editing on it for 10 years. So they really know the drill, and a lot of communication, really. Once a game ends, if a game one ends, let's say on a Tuesday night, you might not get that game into edit for a few days, but we're talking about it the next morning, if not that night. What do we want to do? How do we want to execute this? So when it comes time to actually get it in the post-production stage, you're just executing the plan at that time. You're not really coming up with the plan. That's already been discussed, hopefully well shot. And even though you're changing things a little bit as you go here and there, for the most part, you're executing a game plan and sticking to somewhat of a script, which helps meet the deadlines.
Talk about the script that you actually create. How long was that process, and talk about the narration to go along with that script?
Yeah, we have a great writer, Aaron Cohen, who's been writing with us on this film for years and is, one of the top writers in the field. And we'll speak to him throughout, and often we craft sort of an open beforehand and even a close. Especially, when you have a team like the Dodgers, such an iconic team, the storyline going in, that they're this, a storied franchise. They've been chasing this championship. So we'll come up with some idea for an open. And on the flip side, we'll already start talking about a close sometimes minutes after the series ends, if not even before the clinching game, when you kind of have a feeling which way it might go. Then the rest of it, the rest of the script, we're kind of just going on a day-to-day basis with the editors. A lot of the film, if you've seen these before, are really driven by audio that we get at site. Interviews, press conferences, announcer calls. So the script is really important, but the games themselves are often really driven narratively by the audio that we capture from the players in the games. And then we're just constantly tweaking the script as we go. And this year we were fortunate enough to have Hall of Famer icon Vin Scully do the narration for this, which I think for Dodger fans was a perfect fit to have him kind of be the voice of this championship film.
Obviously, we have to mention Vin Scully because he is an iconic Dodgers voice. So that's a terrific tie-in to the World Series.
Yeah, it's such the rarest of cases. He's still great. He's still at the top of his game. His voice is as good as ever, but he's been there for all of them, from Brooklyn to LA, for all of their World Series championships, all the great moments, all the iconic players. He's seen it all. So to have him be the voice for this, I thought was fitting. And he had it all down. I mean, he took the script. And for us, it's nice to have him on this, of course, because he's Vin Scully. But from a personal standpoint, this is probably a little inside production. It was easy because you sort of give him the script. He knows what to do. And you really just back up and let him do his thing. And that's what he did.
I think that was a great move. Now, obviously, this is your fifth time I'm doing the World Series. I would hate you to choose your children, but however, how is this World Series ranked compared to the previous four to you?
I think from a standpoint of accomplishment, and I know this could sound self-serving, and I don't mean it to be because I'm speaking on behalf of the whole team, it maybe feels kind of close or at the top of the list, just because we didn't know earlier in the year. You don't go into a baseball season wondering if you're going to have a World Series. You go in wondering who's going to be in the World Series, not if you're going to have a World Series. So that was the first obstacle. And then there were so many things that went into the planning and preparation, not from our standpoint, I mean from a league standpoint, just to pull an event like this off. And then we had to adjust our plans and think about what we're doing. Usually we have, everything we want at our disposal or close to it. So from a personal level, I think it was very satisfying to do this one just because of, it wasn't a given where all the other years, it's just a matter of where are you going and how you're going to do it. This year, there was a big question of if you were going to do it. So it felt good. And the other ones were very unique. We're fortunate enough that in this 4 or 5 year run, the Cubs won their first World Series in 108 years. The Royals won one when I started doing this in 2015, which that had been a long time for them. The Red Sox, had a couple of really good World Series wins in there. So I think they've all been unique, but this one probably was the most challenging.
Well, you've been there with all of them, so always through baseball history with yourself. So that's a great job. As a fan, what was your biggest highlight out of this Dodgers Tampa Bay game?
It's It's interesting to say it because it's a series the Dodgers won, of course, but I do think the way that game 4 ended was kind of like one of the most dramatic games I had ever kind of been a part of and worked. Just seeing how that all unfolded with the Rays and how that game happened. But then also for the Dodgers, kind of the Clayton Kershaw storyline and how that sort of came full circle. One of, if not the best pitcher of his generation. This was the one thing that was kind of, eluding him. He's had some struggles in October, also had a lot of success, but he's had some struggles. And I think to see him perform so well on this stage and just see the emotion of it all, what it meant. I mentioned before about not knowing, if we were going to have a World Series. Then when you knew that there was a season, part of me wondered, what would it feel like at the end? It's a shorter season. It's a different type of playoffs. Will it feel the same way? Will it feel as emotional and as exciting and as dramatic as past World Series? And at least from what I thought and noticed seeing the Dodgers players, of course, it meant as much, maybe even more, just seeing what it took for everybody to get to that point.
You have no idea how many times I replayed that game 4 ending for myself, and including in your video back and forth, because that was probably one of the most shocking things that I have never seen before.
Amazing. It really is. And I'm a fan of all sports, and they all can have their dramatic finishes and all great endings. But I do think there's something still about baseball, which is, there is no clock. You've got to get that final out. The Rays were down to that out. They were down to that strike. And then to have that kind of emotion of an ending, and then for the Dodgers to come back one day later and immediately just shake that off and win, I thought it just showed the best of the series and the best of the competition.
Excellent. Now, obviously, moving forward, 2020 for baseball is technically over, but 2021 is still a question mark. So what are some of the things that you guys are actually conversing possibly for the future, or are you just assuming everything's going to be normal next year?
I don't, it's weird. I love to, after a year like this, I don't know if I assume anything's normal or going to be normal. I hope it will be. So we don't know. We're just hoping to get, a season, obviously a regular season. And I know everybody's hoping that fans could be back in there and everything. I thought once this season started and the game started, I thought the play was really good. I thought the postseason was excellent, and it really had a great World Series. At the same time, I hope that's a once in a generational type thing and that we're back to normal in a few months. But I don't know, like everybody else, I guess we're just hoping.
Excellent. Well, you know what? I loved it. I love your documentaries.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And before I let you go, one of the things that my sister actually remarked and asked me is that that you guys didn't include Justin Turner attempted murder of the Dodgers team after the World Series, but that's just a joke.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, we documented what happened. It was still such an unknown, but I tell you, from a personal standpoint, the one thing that I took from it is just, it really showed you how fragile everything was, and I said that to you, I think just a few minutes ago in the beginning, that you didn't know there was an if, and would this all happen, and it just shows you could have all the best plans and all the best protocols, which everybody did. And I think everybody had the best interest, but it's such an unknown. There's such an unknown. And I think it just reinforced the fact that, like, you realize how fragile it all is. And thankfully, everything concluded, and it was a great World Series.
That's true. Well, hey, thank you very much, Jed, for this conversation. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get to talk again next year.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. Bye now.